It's a seller's market. The market's a little bit bullish because of the interest rates are a little bit lower than previous. And now we are having more and more bond and credit players that are coming to provide credit for us. It's quite uncommon, actually. It's a very new situation in Brazil. I don't believe it's going to take a lot of time on that market. It's probably going to go back to the equilibrium back. But it's in 2019 and 18 and 19 are very positive for going for credit, for debt capital market is something that is more is stronger now in Brazil. So this is great. Well, last year, in the beginning of the year, there was a lot of uncertainty or who's going to be the president, and if we have the fiscal measures we have to make the country grow. So it's uncomparable. 2019 is much better because now we have more clarity. There is a government with a clear agenda to make fiscal adjustment that is necessary. The pension reform, a lot of tax reforms that are being planned for the country. So I think it's very clear today. It's much clearer. Any country that wants to grow, it's quite common after recessions to invest in infrastructure. And what I can say, if you look of the scenarios in the public auctions and the concessions, it's very competitive. There are lots of players coming. We are just one of those players. There are several players competing for infrastructure assets. So infrastructure will be busy. We believe there are lots of opportunities. The country has underinvested in infrastructure for many years. So this is for certain one of the segments and the sectors that we will have opportunities in the future for equity and for debt, certainly. I think the first thing, it's very known, is the most important competitor on credit market is the government. So the fiscal policy is the first one, because the government needs to let the savings, internal and external savings, available for projects. So tax reform, the tax reform and the pension reforms are essential, so we can have a better superavit, fiscal superavit. So this is the first measure. But in terms of infrastructure, where I can talk, there are several regulatory issues that needs to be solved. This is something that is known in the market. Every single segment has a different small issue. And we have made a lot of efforts. For example, in energy, we have a very strong regulatory framework working for several years. Now we have some, in toll roads, we have some good regulatory regimes improving and improving. But regulatory is something that takes years and decades sometimes to come to full maturity. So regulatory, vertical regulatory, specific microeconomic measures is one thing, and the fiscal one, that is certainly the one that will take the government bonds interest rates lower, which will allow a more alive credit market. We truly believe that PPP holds, purchasing power parity holds, and we do long-term investments. This is clear for us. We have a lot of evidence that if we invest in Brazil in contracts protected by inflation, you are protected against currency devaluation. This is something that needs to be clear in the market. There are lots of demands for dollar-denominated products or dollar-denominated revenues and concessions. Our view is a little bit different from the market. We truly believe that inflation-protected contracts is enough. And we already have, in almost any segment, all the concessionary products are inflation-protected, and there is market for inflation products. So we truly believe that we already have a good framework to provide credit for our companies. We are very satisfied with the availability of credit for our infrastructure investments. We have US dollars equity investors that take the risk of the currency in the long term. If they have inflation protected contracts, we believe they are mitigating perfectly, or the best way we can, the cheapest cost for the Brazilian society. If you do US dollar denominated contracts, what's going to happen? You lose your monetary power for the central bank. This is something that's to be aware. Forecasting new exchange rate is impossible, but we fully believe that when we look today, we are very confident that our exchange, our currency is undervalued. How long it will take to go to the equilibrium again? Nobody knows. Nobody knows for certain. But we are very confident that investing now at this entry point now in Brazil will not take any or very little exchange rate risk because of the situation of the currency in this moment.